How's it going, guys? It's Cole with See-Through Panel, showing off 5 more of my favorite books I read this year. As always, I will not be spoiling anything. I will just be flipping through it and talking about the basic premise and why I liked it. If you haven't seen my previous video, go check that out afterwards. They can be watched in any order. They're just 5 books a piece, so 10 books total, not in any order. They're all just my 10 favorite books that I read this year. And I should clarify, just like the last video, these are just books that I read this year, not books that came out this year. A lot of them are pretty old and have been out for quite a while. Just ones that I read this year and really, really loved. So, starting off with Moonshadow, the definitive edition, written by J.M. DeMatteis, and John J. Muth did the art. Published by Dark Horse in this nice hardcover edition, retailing for only $30. And for a book this dense and hardcover this nice, I would say it's definitely worth the price at $30. This is a classic, fully painted book. Apparently one of the first fully painted books in American comics, which is really interesting. And I will struggle to explain it to you because it is so dense and layered, and it's essentially prose at the heart of it with painted art over that by Muth. And I hesitate to even try and explain this because it's just one of the most sprawling adventure series that I've ever read, and definitely the most complicated one that I've ever reviewed. It's essentially a coming-of-age tale with a sci-fi shell around it, and it goes to places that I can't explain or even really imagine without reading them myself. It is a child who was birthed from a human woman impregnated by an alien, and it is an adult book from that premise, very much an adult book, but it is a coming-of-age tale with so many themes and layers and influences packed into it that it's nigh impossible for me to speak about it in a way that is comprehensive. It is so extremely dense. You can probably tell by all the words on the page. This could be a novel, honestly, but it is much better off for being this painted beauty that Muth made it into. It is, yeah, as I said, a coming-of-age tale in a sci-fi kind of wrapping, and there's just things that happen that are completely off the wall, things that will break your heart, things that you'll laugh at, things that will confuse you, but eventually get answered. It is a bit of everything, really. It covers many genres. I really can't speak. It's going to be one of my worst reviews, but I can't explain much of the story, but I can tell you that I love it, and I need to return to it someday and read it again because there are just so many things going on. Each issue is an entire piece of its own. It can be read start to finish, and you will learn something from that. The characters have so much growth and personality to them. DeMatteis really knew what he was doing, and I've never read anything like this in comics. It's definitely an epic in the most epic sense of the word, and the art is just gorgeous, gorgeous painted art. Very classic feeling, both in the prose and the art, but at the same time, I would say timeless, considering it's quite old at the time that I read it, and it felt completely modern to me. So yeah, shouldn't keep going on about this, but my most vague review ever. It's Moonshadow, and it's amazing. I just can't tell you why. Up next, let's do Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, written by Matt Fraction, drawn by Steve Lieber, and colored by Nathan Fairbairn, published by DC Comics, retailing for $30. And I just have to say, with the big two, this is $30, or that Moonshadow hardcover is $30. The big two's pricing is just all over the place. If you have $30, buy the Moonshadow hardcover. This is an amazing book, but in terms of a physical product, it's confusing how they could charge $30 for this, basically a slightly oversized trade paperback. That being said, I don't want to overshadow the fact that this book is hilarious. One of the only comedy books I have in my collection, because I find comedy to be nigh impossible to pull off. It is just so difficult to do comedy in comics, in my opinion. And although comedy is subjective in every medium, it's physically constrained to the page and panel layouts in a way that is hard to pull off a gag, especially a sight gag or a reveal. Like this reveal right here of the cat being in a destroyed bathroom. He comes in, he turns his head, he talks to it, he says, "Oh, hey." Then you look at the cat. But my eye is drawn to this cat the moment I flip the page, and this head turn build-up is not a part of that. So, yeah, just things like that can ruin the, like, I don't want to say suspense because it's a comedy book, but it is suspense. And it just, sometimes the storytelling doesn't work in comics for me for comedy. It's really hard to do. But this book made me laugh all the time, multiple times an issue, out loud. It is hilarious. Matt Fraction is well known to be a hilarious writer. Very serious stuff sometimes, but he knows not to take himself too seriously, and he just makes fun comics. And Steve Lieber, the facial expressions present in this book are amazing. And some of the creative designs are also very good. Like Jimmy Olsen falling from orbit and turning into a giant turtle and saved by Superman. Very much classical cartooning, very DC type aesthetic that you would expect, but very much unique in this present day. The DC house style now is not this. The colors are also a lot different than the typical DC house style. And it was nice to see this. It feels very classic for DC, even though it's very much a modern art with the coloring and the digital art. But yeah, I thought this was great. It's probably the only book I have in my collection that's just a straight up comedy book. It also has some really cool parallel storytelling with different time periods going on at the same time, different chapters in each issue. Like here we have just different chapters. Whenever you see that yellow box, that's a different chapter. This is just antics, Jimmy Olsen's antics in one page, which go from very funny, him like hitting an alien on the head with the hammer, to him kissing an alien. He's a horse and so is Superman. Falling into orbit, whatever that is. But also this is like very real and gritty and grounded and pulls you back a moment. And it's written very compellingly, and there's a lot of heart in Jimmy Olsen. He's a very, very fun character, but he's got an actual personality beneath the thin veneer of comedy that shines in really good moments in this series. And when you do see that side of him, it's very, very compelling to continue to figure out what's going to happen, why he's in the situation, and you want the best for him because he's really just one of the most innocent characters in DC, although he causes the most trouble. And yeah, I loved it. There's not a lot of books I have in my library like this in terms of the tone of it. It's almost 100% comedy, but I'd give about 5% in there for just heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, maybe not breaking, moments of real character depth and maturity. So very, very good book from DC. The only DC book in my top 10. Up next will be Echolands, written by J.H. Williams and W. Hayden Blackman, art by J.H. Williams III, colors by Dave Stewart, letters by Todd Klein, published by Image in a widescreen format. Issues 1 through 6 in this hardcover, and it is $35 US. This is a book I previously covered on the channel, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it is an adventure book in a world that is influenced by almost every piece of media that you can imagine. Star Wars, kaiju movies, pirate comics, old noir PI stuff. I mean, it's basically anything you can think of probably exists in this world. Werewolves and Little Red Riding Hood, gray aliens with spaceships, new gods from Kirby basically exist in here, and all of that conveyed through the absolutely gorgeous art of J.H. Williams III. I use that word a lot, but J.H. Williams, his art is just to die for. It's got so many styles pulled off so well. I'll be showing a few of them off, but my other video does a much better job and goes a lot deeper. Here is a mix of very disparate styles. Kind of horror like Bernie Wrightson black and white, ink washy. Looks like fully painted kind of space stuff there. Old cartooning. I'll be flipping through some more, but It is a romp through that world, a very much an adventure book through that world. It has a pretty dark and gritty tone at times, but overall, I think it's a pretty fun book. It's a very serious book. It probably is only for mature readers because of the page I'm about to show. But it is definitely a fun book to read, and it has a lot of things in it that you'll recognize and you'll be appreciative for having them included in here, especially if you're a comics fan, but even if you're not, just genre-wise, a lot of ground is covered in this first 6 issues. And here's another example of these disparate styles. Old pirate comics, some PI stuff, definitely Euro, very line heavy. Yeah, and then our main characters in kind of like the generic style of Williams, but I hesitate to say generic style. I also love this character because of how intricately rendered the inside of her, I guess her body is, and all like the outlines, kind of keeping everything concise and separated. Whenever her real appearance is on the page, it's very interesting to look at. The layouts are maddening in this book. They work so well when you're reading it, but if you go back in, they're so complex, and they draw the eye in different random areas. If I could find a better page to illustrate, I definitely would. This is a pretty simple layout for Williams. Beautiful, painterly pirate stuff going on there. I'm flipping only to, here we go. Like, your eye, when looking at this without being in the story, doesn't know where to go. But when you're in the story, it just flows so smoothly, and he's a great storyteller in the sense where you are never lost when looking at his art. Layouts, this format is very, very crazy to me. I think I have 4 books of this format in my collection, and it's still not something I'm used to, but it's something I very much enjoy, and I would like to see more of. Kirby Crackle all over the place. Another style with the New Gods type stuff. So yeah, getting carried away like I did in my other video with this book. Check this book out. It is awesome. Up next, let's do Black Science, written by Rick Remender, art by Matteo Scalera, colored by Dean White and Moreno Dionisio, and I think one more person in this early iteration. Big chunky hardcover by Image, retailing for $50 US. Nice sewn binding. There are 3 hardcovers that make up the entirety of this series, and Rick Remender always pushes to have his stuff blown up in this oversized format, and I very much appreciate that. Mike Spicer colors issue 11. That's the 3rd. Russ Wooten on letters. Although it's strange that they have such inconsistent colorists, it does even out towards the end of the series, and although they are different colorists, it all blends fairly well together, and the tone of it stays relatively the same. You probably won't notice unless you're really looking for it or you have an eye for that sort of thing. This is a sci-fi story of a trip through the multiverse with a family that is falling apart, and a scientific-minded father that is kind of distant from his family, and it's heart-wrenching. It's one of the most heart-wrenching books I've ever read. The long format of it, I think it's around 40 issues if I had to say. That long format of it really makes you get attached to the characters, and the fact that they're a family makes you even more attached to them as a family structure. They're always falling apart, breaking, getting back together. There's so much turmoil that goes on through the series. A lot of character growth, but then a lot of regression. And then Matteo Scalera's art, I'm sure you can see, is just wonderful, wonderful. It has a sense of motion that I really appreciate, like with this bubbles here, but it's also got a very intricately detailed still frames and landscapes of alien civilizations that are just really crazy. And this is a crazy book. A lot of weird stuff goes on because it's Remender going through the multiverse in like a sci-fi setting. He's gonna get weird with it. He gets weird with the stories set like today in New York, so he's gonna get weird with a multiversal setting. And Scalera is the perfect artist for this. I think it's probably is gonna go down as Scalera's best work in comics, possibly Remender. Remender has a lot that could be up there, but Scalera doesn't have a ton of work, and this is the longest form work I know he's done in sequential form. But he's awesome in this book. His designs are to die for. He's constantly throwing new things at you visually to kind of set this book apart from any other sci-fi books with aliens and crazy, crazy designs, crazy landscapes, and all that stuff. But yeah, Remender really shines when he's talking to you from the heart through these characters, and emotionally this book is very resonant to me. I think it's probably the closest I've felt to a cast of characters. It is a pretty long story, so I do give that credit for getting me so immersed in this world. Is spending a lot of time with them. And look how scratchy Scalera can get when he wants to. Real gritty. But just can be clean as hell when he wants to be. He can just show a beautiful, clean landscape. But yeah, I think this book is one of the best things I've ever read in general, let alone this year. So it definitely belonged in this list. Also great title pages here, and it just lays flat beautifully like that. Wow. Great. This doesn't even fit on the page. You're not even seeing the entire book. Yeah. But Scalera's art pushes it over the edge, but even with a less talented artist as the masterful Scalera, this book would be just amazing. The writing holds up no matter what you... I mean, I shouldn't say that. Remender's not for everybody, but for me, I've definitely had misses with him, but this is some strong, strong writing. I don't know anyone that really wouldn't like this, especially if you give it a chance through a couple issues. I could definitely see the first issue not sitting well with people, but there's basically a character for every personality type, and you can choose your own good and bad guys because they're all neutral. No one's good, no one's bad. It's just there's so many conflicting character types going at each other in here, and it's a journey. It's a wonderful, wonderful journey, and I really, really loved reading the entire series this year. This is just book one. Didn't want to show off anything from the later books because don't want to get too spoilery. Quickly, I will go through number 5 from this video. This is Infinite Kung Fu by Kagan McLeod, published by Top Shelf, retailing for $25. Even the price is stylized to fit the book, which is great. Strange feeling, I don't know how to describe it. Nice production, like overhanging covers. I don't know what they call that. Covers are bigger than the pages. It feels nice. It kind of ups the quality of the book without doing much. This is I don't know what to say. This is a kung fu post-apocalyptic, like zombie beat 'em up, mythical. I don't even know what to say about this. It's awesome. As you can see through the art, it is just gory in a fun way, not in a gross you out kind of way, like kicking someone's spine out of their body, like Mortal Kombat. It's a fun book about a man who is essentially going to become the best martial artist to ever live. And there's martial art gods, and there's martial arts zombies, and there's poison kung fu, and there's there's a ton of influences outside of just the Asian influences that you would imagine, and it's very fun. There's a giant like Buddha tank towards the end. I don't want to get too into it, but it's wild. And there's 2 styles visually, if I could get back on track. There is this normal style with a lot of washes and watercolor kind of going on to give it some depth. And then there is this style here, which is very clean lines and a lot of more lines than the other one, and no kind of washing or inks or really heavy blacks other than the background. You can probably see the clear difference between the 2 styles. This style here with all the lines and the less washes and stuff, that is for flashbacks, and then the normal style is for the present day. It's a book jam-packed with action that never lets go of the gas here and just continually pushes through really fun character moments, really interesting world building, and although I do think the story is awesome and really pays off in the end, it is very satisfying. The action in this book is to die for. You come for the action, you stay for the story. But even if you're really not a fan of the story, just reading some of these fight scenes, just not even reading the words, just looking at the panels and watching how they all unfold is super fun. Zombie stories are an easy way to make an action-packed story. So are kung fu stories, and so he does both. and it pays off, man. It pays off a lot. And this is one of the only long form works I think we're ever going to get from McCloud. He doesn't work in comics normally. He's done a couple comics here and there. This is his longest form work, and man, it's a hell of a legacy to leave doing just this one thing. Guys just eviscerating zombies. The sense of time here, of the standstill moment, and then the blood starts to rain down. It's just, it's so kung fu movie. I love it so much. I covered this on the channel as well. So the only thing I've shown off that I didn't cover on the channel here would be Moonshadow, Jimmy Olsen, and Black Science. So those are the top books I read this year. Combined with the last video, that makes 10 books. And yeah, that is just some of the best stuff you could read ever, let alone just this year. So I really appreciate you guys watching. Check out this stuff if you haven't already. They're all fantastic in their own ways, and go check out the videos on the ones I already covered. So I really appreciate you guys watching. It's been an awesome year for the channel. I only started halfway through the year, and I've had a lot of fun talking to you guys and making videos. So I will continue to do so into the next year. Thank you guys. Peace.